It's the beginning of a new decade, depending on who you talk to. And today we're going to talk about what we're looking forward to in 2020 on today's episode of the Geek Watch podcast.
This is the Geek Watch podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 94 of the Geek Watch podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hello, Brian.
And so we're going to talk a little bit about 2020 and some things that we've seen so far. But before we do that, of course, if Mandy and I sound older, it's because we are.
Yes.
We are recording January the 3rd, and January the 1st is my birthday. And today, January the 3rd, is Mandy's birthday. So happy birthday, Mandy.
Happy birthday, Brian.
And so we older and wiser geeks.
Right.
So a couple of...
Capricorns here.
Yes, absolutely. So take that however you want to take it. So now, before we get started proper onto the podcast, we've got to answer that question that everybody's been asking since we took our vacation, which, of course, is, Brian, did you see cats?
Oh, that was a question? I didn't... I didn't know that everyone was asking that question. Brian,
maybe I was too literal.
Did you see cats?
Surprisingly not, no, I didn't. And I didn't see it for probably the weirdest reason anybody would not go to see a movie. Because I don't know if you've been keeping track of all the cats news. Of course, we talked about it last podcast, and what a delightful little train wreck it looked like it was turning into. And a whole lot has changed, except there was a little piece of news that the movie had been released and that some of the effects hadn't been finished all the way.
Right.
And so they had to send in a new copy of the film with better effects. Now, when we say the effects were messed up, well, I mean, we're talking about...
an entire human hand.
More than one.
Oh, I really only knew about Dame Judi Dench's.
Right, that her human hand
with her wedding band on it. And
yes, absolutely. And what makes that... especially creepy for me is there's a short film, and I think it's on YouTube, and if it is, I'll go ahead and put a link to it. If you like creepy stuff, it's called The Cat with Human Hands, and it's a stop motion film, and it's it's just as creepy as you would imagine it to be.
Is it claymation, stop motion, or puppets?
More of puppets.
Okay.
But it was called The Cat with Human Hands, and it's a rather disturbing piece of work that I enjoy very much. And of course, that was the first thing I thought of when I heard about the hand being put in. And so, but there was also things where the ballet shoes were showing, and some of the cats that were hovering above the ground because they hadn't set things up, didn't set the height properly, and so they're actually walking above the ground instead of on the ground. So there was a bunch of those things, and so it was like, I want to say that, when the movie released on the weekend, it was by Tuesday, everything had been corrected. And strangely enough, that was the reason why I decided not to go see Cats, because they were correcting the film. If I'm going to go see a train wreck, I want to see it from the engine to the caboose.
Oh, yeah.
So now my understanding is there's still plenty to marvel about this film. We'll put it kindly. But once they started making corrections, at that point, I'm like, no, I wanted to see the whole train wreck, and I missed my opportunity, because
I'm sure it'll be out there somewhere. Someone caught it on YouTube, some bootlegs somewhere.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
But yeah, getting the chance to see that film on the big screen, I'm afraid my chance had passed, and so I decided, although my understanding is it's still the existential horror that you've come to expect from this movie.
I've really enjoyed all the Twitter reviews and the real reviews from actual real magazines and real, and they're just as beautifully sarcastic as you would think. And like we had talked about that they had put in a storyline in this otherwise episodic epistolary show, I guess would be a good, there isn't, in the Andrew Lloyd Webber, there isn't really a through line. It's describing each cat as T.S. Eliot did.
Right.
But apparently the story was that it sounds like whoever performed the best. So this was like cat American Idol, America's Got Talent, X Factor.
Right.
Whatever cat did the best got to go to cat heaven. So that's the story plot. I haven't seen it. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the rumors.
Yeah, I think that's what that's what I heard. I haven't seen the stage musical, so I don't know if that was actually part of the stage musical or not. But I saw some stuff on Twitter. I saw some of the people talking about their experiences seeing it. And one person in particular who did a series of tweets about things that were happening where at the end you kind of felt like a Vietnam veteran because you'd been through something together. There was a moment where somebody was like, no, please, no, don't, please. Someone begged for their life during the movie. I also heard that there was a scene where Ian McKellen's character pushes another cat off of a boat into the water, and somebody from the audience screams, "You shall not pass!" So that happened.
The Gandalf cat, I guess.
Right, the Gandalf cat. And so there have been more than one person to speculate that this might become a new Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh, and have shadow cats in front of it at midnight? Shadow cats?
I was waiting for you to say that. I'm like, and you did not disappoint. Yes. Although I wonder, I saw this article about James Corden, who was one of the characters. Of course, he has a late night talk show, and most of us geeks remember him from Doctor Who. The father is Stormageddon, Destroyer of Worlds. But
Alfie. He likes Alfie, but he prefers Stormageddon.
Exactly. But apparently, and this may have changed since the article, but apparently when the article was written, he had not seen Cats. He had not watched the movie. He's in it. There's something about James Corden and CGI animals he seems to have a problem with, because, of course, he was the voice for Peter Rabbit.
Oh, yeah.
And that movie didn't do so well.
Yeah.
So
I didn't see it, but I heard things, and I heard there was a boycott of it, and so.
Because it hated on people with allergies?
Right.
It
was teaching people to weaponize allergies.
Right.
So if you had a friend with a peanut, or if you had a frenemy with a peanut allergy, sneak peanuts into their food, and you can, yeah.
Yeah. So to answer the question, no, I didn't see it. And the main reason I didn't see it is because they had made corrections to it. Like I said, I wanted to see it in its full glory, missed the chance to do that. But what I did go see, of course, was Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker.
The close of the Skywalker trilogy, or not trilogy, saga.
Well, depending on who you talk to.
Really? Okay.
Because when I look at
supposedly then.
Yeah, I know you haven't seen it yet, and I'm going to avoid some spoilers, but I just want to talk about this generally, and maybe if you do wind up going to see it, maybe in another episode we'll go a little more spoilery, but we're kind of in the heart of it right now. So I don't feel like we should cover a whole lot, because especially with this movie, you don't want to know anything going into it for sure.
Okay.
One thing definitely, and this is not really going to be a spoiler because they've been saying this in the news. There have been those moments where they've taken pokes at the Last Jedi in it. For sure. And not everybody liked what Rian Johnson did. Allow me to basically take a side road here for just a moment of talking about Star Wars. I'll say this about Rian Johnson. If he had made a movie 100 times worse than the one that he made, one that absolutely was a disgrace and an insult to the Star Wars franchise, if I had hated that movie 100 times more than any other person on the planet hated that movie, I still would have forgiven him for that movie after seeing Knives Out.
Oh, okay.
On my birthday, went to see Rian Johnson's written, directed Knives Out, and it was
like Chris Evans and
Christopher Plummer, a great cast of people in the movie, and Jamie Lee Curtis is in it.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, as somebody who's a big fan of the mystery movies of the 70s, the whodunits. They used to make these all the time. Now, of course, you don't see them much anymore. This is definitely a throwback to that type of thing. But it's also got an interesting twist to the, and not just like a plot twist. I would say the way they tell the story. It's a little bit different than your typical murder mystery, which makes it that much more interesting. I loved this movie. And any of the Geek Watchers out there, if you're listening to this and it's still out in the theaters, definitely go see it. If not, watch it streaming, get a Blu-ray of it. Definitely check it out. It's absolutely fantastic. So my side road trip to talk about that, but going back to Star Wars, I do feel like the movie is more of an ending of the last 3 of the trilogy than, I know it tried to be an ending of all 9 films. It didn't really feel that way to me. There was some, I will say, some indications, some Easter eggs about some of the other movies, but they're just fleeting. I think most of what this movie tried to do was end the trilogy and close everything up there. Now, how well they did, that's up for debate, obviously. But for me, it felt more like the end of the trilogy than, I would say, a big wrap up of all the movies.
Okay.
Like I said, there were hints to the other films, but I feel like they were basically put into the film. I don't think they were necessarily needed for the film. They weren't an integral part of the plot of the film. They were just little moments that you had for people who remember the original trilogy and had memories of the prequels, whatever those memories might have been. But it was more, like I said, to me, it felt more like a wrap up of the last 3 of the last trilogy, and I enjoyed it. It didn't completely blow me away. This wasn't like the greatest Star Wars film I'd ever seen. I think for that trilogy, it was a good film. But obviously, the original trilogy for me is going to be the gold standard for Star Wars, and to be able to tell a story that powerful again in those 3 movies did, it would have been definitely tough to do. And I don't really think any of the 2 trilogies after that rose to that level. But honestly, that's an extremely high bar to have to jump over for sure. But I certainly did enjoy it. I have to say, not as much as I enjoyed the Mandalorian, which
right.
I did finally finish the last of the 8 episodes on Disney Plus. Have you seen any of that at all?
No.
Oh,
just the Baby Yoda memes.
Well, you can't avoid the Baby Yoda memes for sure. But I loved that series. It felt, like I said, it had a wonderful mix of a lot of the stuff that you remember from the original trilogy, but also a lot of a new way of telling that story, and it gives you sort of a different look, a different view of that universe, which I found really, really interesting. And basically, the show itself takes place between the original trilogy, the rebellion winning, and of course the final trilogy. That period, as the New Order begins to form and develop and all that. But honestly, for me, it allows you to go a lot more deeply into different factions of that world. For example, at that point, Jedi and the Force, it's pretty much considered a myth. And so Baby Yoda having these abilities, people are like, what the heck is this?
It's a witch.
It's a witch. And again, not wanting to go into any spoilers, but the way that they ended the series, that I wouldn't necessarily say it's a cliffhanger, but they introduced something at the end that it was kind of a deep cut for people who, and I'm not going to go into it because obviously I don't want to delve into spoilers, but kind of a deep cut for people who are into the mythology. If you've just seen the movies, it's not going to mean that much to you. But if you watch the Rebels cartoon or you are familiar with that world, it's something that you're like, holy cow, they're doing this. They're going to bring this thing out. I will say this: if you get to the end and you're like, what the heck is this? You'll know what I'm talking about. It's that moment. But look it up in say Star Wars Wiki or whatever. You'll get the gist of it. Yeah, the fact that they were able to bring so much of Star Wars into it, but also make it fresh and I enjoyed the heck out of it. It's certainly my toss up for my favorite Disney Plus show at the right now. With, I have to admit, The World According to Jeff Goldblum is it's tough to beat. I love Jeff Goldblum looking at mundane subjects, with his take on it, which is, like I said, I could watch that all day. So, and I've enjoyed the heck out of that, but I really have enjoyed The Mandalorian. Now, news has come out that they're going to bump up the release date for WandaVision. So
we have to wait another year.
I thought they were moving it forward. I thought they were making it sooner.
Oh, I thought they said that it was going to be in 2020, but then they moved it to 2021. Is that not?
I thought that they moved it ahead because the thing about it is here's the thing, and it may have been because I've assumed that they moved it sooner. It might have been because of the fact that Marvel has been saying forever and ever, you need WandaVision to understand the new Doctor Strange movie. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have to look this up because I got to know. The truth is, if they are going to have to delay the release of it, that's going to be a problem. Oh, I'm looking at IO9, an article from yesterday, which is titled, Marvel's WandaVision is arriving sooner than expected.
Oh, okay.
So let me see if they mentioned the date here. Okay. Oh, by the way, did you happen to see the trailer for the new Fantasy Island movie?
Yeah.
For some reason, they did the same thing with the Banana Splits, if you remember. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so WandaVision was planned for a 2021 launch. It'll premiere in 2020, so they were intending to show it in 2021, but they're going to show it now in 2020.
So I got those backwards.
So, yeah, okay. So that makes sense because they definitely mentioned that they wanted, that you had to watch WandaVision to get, to understand Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So a delay would have been disastrous for them. But I can see why they might bump it up. The Mandalorian did so well, and of course now it's done. So, of course, with this streaming service, you want to encourage people to stay on. And The Mandalorian was certainly enough to get... And, of course, season 2 of The Mandalorian's already been greenlit. No surprise there. So we'll get more of that. But yeah, I guess we'll get WandaVision a little bit sooner. But one thing, before we end today, I'm sure since, of course, we already mentioned that we're recording January the 3rd, people are going to wonder, are we going to talk about Doctor Who? And I'm going to hold off on the Doctor Who discussion for a couple of reasons. One, you haven't got a chance to see it all yet. Two, because it is a two-parter. And I think if you've not seen the first one yet, you don't want any kind of a spoilers. And I'm not going to go into any spoilers for sure. Actually, I want to hold off on talking about it completely until the second parter drops. And my plan... although I do have Apple TV and I'm watching it on Apple TV currently. The thing about Apple TV is you have to wait like a day after it airs on BBC America.
Oh, so if it came on Monday, if it came on Sunday, you had to wait till Monday to see it. Okay.
Right. And so, but what I'm planning on doing is my local theater has a Fathom Events where they're going to be showing... they're going to show the first part on the big screen. They're going to show the second part.
Oh, awesome!
Earlier than the TV release.
Okay.
So it's like 2:00. So I'll actually get a chance to see part 2. And there's going to be a live Q&A with the cast also. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And like I said, I don't want to really go into any details because you don't know much and you do not want to be spoiled. I'm sure you've seen, oh my God, I can't believe that ending. And there's a lot of questions right now, a lot of speculation about what that ending means. And a lot of people, like I said, if you go online, a lot of people are saying, well, maybe this means this, maybe this means this. I will say, and I can say this won't make any sense to somebody who's not seen it, so it's not really going to be a spoiler, but my theory on this is that they are dipping into a little bit of, let's just say, Rick and Morty territory with this episode. I say Rick and Morty and some particular Marvel properties. I'll just say that.
Okay.
There's a certain something about that I think that they're starting to dip into Doctor Who, which they have never done before. So they're taking their science fiction to a different level. Let's just say that.
Okay.
And honestly, for me to say one syllable more than that would be a spoiler. And I do not want to go into spoilers for that for sure. But yeah, there's a big reveal toward the end that people just lost their minds and went, how was this even possible? And I have some speculation about that. But that goes into what I said before. And we will definitely talk about it next week when we have seen both episodes and we do our review on it. We will definitely mention that. It wasn't a whole lot of trailers that have come out that we've been that interested in, except of course we did see Quiet Place Part 2. And again, that's going to be something that looks like it's going to expand the world because you have the family basically leaving the safe house as it's burning down. You see them finding new people, and you have the mother saying that she wants to try to save whoever's left of humanity, and you have whoever this male character is saying there some parts of humanity aren't worth saving.
Yeah, it's kind of the classic any post-apocalyptic disaster film, and these Bird Box and Quiet Place, kind of films. They've all got those sects of people. I don't know.
Right.
Very much
sex. Yeah. SECTS.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very much like if you've been watching Apple Plus's C. Which I have, and I've been enjoying. It's a different take on the apocalyptic world. Mm-hmm. It has that medieval feel about it, but it's kind of that situation where you have different groups of people that have different philosophies. And the thing about it is, and anybody's watched The Walking Dead, you know as well as anyone that when you're dealt with such a massive destruction of society, the way groups of people will deal with it are going to be different. Not everybody is going to deal with this situation in the same way. And so
The Stand is a good,
yes,
especially in early days of a disaster.
Yeah. Well, and I've always said that apocalyptic stories, zombie apocalyptic stories in particular, they tend to be crucibles for human behavior. It's basically a crucible to boil down the nature of humanity and distill it in a way to basically to look at it. And I think the main question in any zombie movie, but also in a lot of these well-written apocalyptic story, is what is the nature of humanity? Specifically, is humanity intrinsically good or intrinsically evil? And I think that's the main question that a lot of these stories are looking to tell. And I mean, certainly in The Walking Dead, that's been a theme that's run through this.
And that's a subjective thing. I Am Legend, it's subjective. He thought he was doing good. It turns out, he's their monster. What humanity has become is now what he's destroying.
Right. And that of course is off the movie, the Will Smith film, because I don't think the book went down that path exactly. And to tell the truth, if I recall correctly, the ending changed. They changed it to that ending, which makes sense to me because my understanding was I can't remember what the original ending was, but it didn't test so well. But yeah, I mean that ending certainly with that story, I think makes a lot more sense for sure.
So I always thought that it was right before he's getting ready to be executed by the vampires, and he's sitting in his cell and he realizes that I'm their legend, I'm their monster.
Yeah,
that's what I recall from the book. So.
Yeah, once you mentioned that, I think that might be the case. And so yeah, the movie did go down that same road. So, which again, it's every villain is the hero in their own story. And I always found this weird that people went to see Starship Troopers. How many people went to see Starship Troopers and didn't realize that the humans were the bad guys in the movie? They didn't realize it, but of course they look like us. They're us. And so you don't want to think that you're the bad guy, but they're not, the bugs aren't the bad guys. They're just basically trying to protect their home from invaders.
So later they finally made the author aside, when they finally made Ender's Game, they kind of made you realize, oh, nope, the bugs weren't the bad guys. It was humans.
Yeah, so let's point that out, just in case you didn't catch it. Because I think even when the books came out, that some readers, that part of it kind of went over their heads a little bit. And I find that interesting because it's very difficult to make yourself the villain, in a story. And sometimes in good stories, sometimes that happens because being able to deconstruct human behavior and realize not all of it is beneficial or, good or decent, that's
but when
how
it's told from the standpoint of the villain, it makes, it's because they're the hero of their own story. It feels like they're the heroes. I always talk about Dexter. Dexter is the villain, but since, he kills bad people, we feel like he's the hero.
Right. And then you have to, you find yourself in a situation where it's like going back to Machiavelli. It's like, does the end justify the means? It's like, yes, Dexter has this, he's a serial killer. But because he only kills other serial killers, is that enough to make him the hero? And especially in the books, but in the TV show also, I mean, that's a question they constantly try to answer. And it's not an easy question to answer, nor should it be. But yeah, that's definitely, I think the best stories in the telling of them make us ask questions about ourselves, that it's not just mere escapism, that it's also a way to look at different things and to think about them in a different way. I think that's where story becomes powerful, because it allows us to step outside of ourselves and look at ourselves from the outside. And I think story's been doing that forever, and great stories tend to do that for sure. Yeah, so definitely, I think I want to say March when Quiet Place 2 is going to be out. I believe that's what it said in the trailer. So we'll definitely have that to look forward to. And of course, 2020, there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. And I figure for episode 95, we will delve deeply into Doctor Who, and we'll talk about that two-parter. One thing I will definitely say, and this was something that I've said on the podcast a lot when we talked about the last series, that I wanted to see the Doctor challenged more than she was in the last series. And boy, did they overdo what I asked for. Santa got my letter, because the Doctor is definitely challenged in this episode. And there wasn't really any time during this episode where I thought, oh, she's fine, she'll figure something out. I from the very beginning, you were like, wow, she is in deep on this one. And you're like, how is she going to get out of this one? And it continually started to get worse. You started to realize, oh my God, this just gets worse and worse. And it's like, until you get to that cliffhanger at the end, and you're like, oh no, now what? You're like, I'm not exactly sure how you get out of this, and at least play fair. But yeah, this is definitely something that we're going to have to talk about next week for sure. So we will definitely have that on the schedule for the next episode. But with that said, we come to the end of episode 94 of the Geek Watch podcast. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. For Mandy Petrie, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform, and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.